Hey, this is Lawrence of 180 Nutrition, and of course, welcome to another stellar episode of the Health Sessions, where we are connecting with leading global health and wellness experts to share the best in the latest science thinking, empowering us all to turn our health and lives around. And this week, we welcome back the awesome Dr. Joe Dispenza. It was just over 2 years ago we had him on the podcast, and he's back today to talk about his new book, Becoming Supernatural: How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon. And I'm halfway through his book, and it's simply awesome. Now, just to give you a little bit of a backstory, I went to Joe, after having Joe on the podcast, I went to his workshop just over 2 years ago, and then I followed his work and went and did more of his workshops, and I have to say his work has had a huge impact on my life. And if you've been following the podcast for many years, you'd know and heard me talk about Joe on several occasions. This podcast, I think we've saved the best to last of 2018 because I thought it was absolutely awesome, and Joe was on fire today, and we go down so many rabbit holes, and it was great perspective as well because Stu hasn't done Joe's work, and obviously I've quite involved, so we get both sides of the coin, and I just thought it made for a fantastic interview, and we covered many topics, of course, and it's been fantastic. But if you're unfamiliar with Joe's work, I just have to say, sit back, enjoy, keep an open mind, and I think you're going to really love what he has to say and how this interview goes. And it's probably an episode you're going to want to listen to a couple of times as well as we dive into it. And yeah, I thought it was fantastic anyway, so I have no doubt you're going to enjoy. And I just want to mention as well, guys, that if you are kind of loving these topics and this work around Joe, Joe Dispenza's work, Greg Braden's work, Bruce Lipton's work, all the people that we've kind of had on in that sort of neuroscience, mindset, philosophy on the podcast, I've created a Facebook page where I kind of delve into that work a little bit more. So if you want to come and join us, the Facebook group, I should say, is called Let It In with Guy Lawrence. Let It In with Guy Lawrence. You can come back there and we can have more of these discussions and stuff like that around that. Or just go back to guylawrence.com.au and you can join the group from there. You'll just have to opt into my 5-step morning routine, which is, I think, actually worth getting anyway. So go back to guylawrence.com.au or Let It In with Guy Lawrence on Facebook, search for that and come join us. I'd love to see you in there. Anyway, let's go over to Joe Dispenza. I loved every minute of this podcast, and I have no doubt I'll listen to it a couple of times myself because there's nuggets of wisdom in it. Let's go over to Joe. Hi, this is Guy Lawrence. I'm joined with Stuart Cook as always. Good morning, Stuart.
Hello, mate.
And we welcome back to the show today our awesome guest, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you, mates.
There he is.
We've actually had a few Aussie impressions come on over the years, mate. I reckon that was the best one we've had.
Oh God.
Look, just in case, I love kicking off this question for the show, and I have no doubt I'll get a great answer this morning as well. And for our listeners who might not be familiar with your work, and because you travel so much, when somebody asks you, a stranger, what you do for a living, what do you usually say, Joe?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I was on a flight just the other day, and I was 40 minutes to get from one side of the airport to the other, and I was walking very quickly, and I passed a person that I knew was going to be on my flight, and I knew she was going to sit next to me. I don't know how I knew that, but anyway, she got on the plane, and she looked over and she pointed at the seat, and I got up and I helped her put her bags above me, and then she sat down next to me, and I said, so how long have you been an attorney? And she looked at me and she said, what? How did you know I was an attorney? I said, I just know. She said, I worked so hard on not looking like an attorney. I said, oh, I knew you're an attorney. And I said, let me guess, you work for the government. She said, how did you know that? I said, I don't know, I just knew. And so we started talking, and she said, so what do you do? And I said, I always start off with the conservative answer, I'm an author. And then they say, well, she said, what do you write about? I said, I write about the neuroscience and the biology of personal change and transformation. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, like, how do we change? How do we create a better life for ourselves? How do we live with more passion and more wholeness? And from that moment on, from the time we took off to the time we landed, we never stopped talking. And I had so much to do, but she had question after question after question after question. And it's a topic that I think most people are interested in because I think we innately believe that what this new science is telling us, we innately believe that it is possible for us to create a better life for ourselves and to change who we are. So it was a great conversation.
I have no
You
doubt.
know, that sounds to me like the cheapest way to book a one-on-one consultation with you.
Well, I listen. We talked. I mean, her husband was an Italian guy that imports wine, and we had just a great conversation. We covered everything. Yeah.
Fucking fantastic.
That's so awesome. Well, Joe, we're on the podcast today to mainly discuss your new book, which actually, funnily enough, I had the copy arrive a few days ago, which and I've been making my way through it, and it's fantastic. And I have to say as well, Joe, that I read Evolve Your Brain, and then Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, but this comes at a very different feel to it from what the other things that you've written. Why write the new book, and B, what can everyone expect from it?
Well, it's interesting, gentlemen, because I think this is a book that I've wanted to write for a long time, and if you've read Evolve, and I'm so surprised you made it through that because it's so thick with neuroscience, and I think when you write your first book, you write to your greatest critic, and then as you move to your second book, you loosen up. Breaking the Habit, I loosened up quite a bit. And then when I wrote You Are the Placebo, I just used a lot of allegories and a lot of stories and mixed the science in with it. And in all those three books, I referenced a lot of material and a lot of research. But this book I wanted to write and reference my own research and to build my own model of understanding. And in the last 5 years, as you know, we've done extensive research in our advanced workshops. And the reason that I decided to do those measurements was because people were having significant transformations, healings from cancer to diabetes, tumor shrinking, hearing coming back, healings from lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, anxiety, depression, Hashimoto's syndrome, really, really empowering mystical moments for people. And it was happening in real time. And when you have a subjective experience, and Stu says to Guy, well, man, I just had the most rockin' moment of my life. And you may say, oh yeah, sure, yeah, pass the ketchup. And because you don't know, right? It could just be a moment. A person could be saying that this is the way it is, but you don't know what's going on in that person's mind. But when we have the brain scans to say, and the heart scans, and the genetic changes, and the neurotransmitter changes, and the changes in immune function, and the changes in the person's energy, and the energy of the room, when you start seeing that there are objective measurements where we could say, wow, Stu can't make his brain do that. In fact, it's happening to him. And I start seeing the same patterns and the same changes going on, and we see genes changing, and all of a sudden people producing all these amazing moments. To me, that's supernatural. And it's not just supernatural when a person has a mystical experience, but when you're capturing levels of energy in the brain or levels of coherence in the brain and heart or genes being upregulated, it means then that you're no longer relying on things outside of you to change how you are inside of you. You're actually changing from within, and you're no longer so dependent on something or someone or some drug or some person to really make you happy or to heal your body. You're actually not inducing a mystical experience from some a drug. You're actually doing it by thought alone, and to me that's supernatural because it gives people the power to begin to realize that they're no longer victims of their lives, that they're creators of their lives. So I took a chance in this book because I stepped outside of the conventional model of science in which I typically write, and I don't care. I mean, I really don't care what people think about me, or I really don't care if it doesn't fit into the conventional scientific model. I know what I witness. I know the measurements we're getting, and now we're quantifying the subjective experience to such a degree that I can teach it better because I have more information to teach transformation. And every time we gather new information, I can teach transformation better and close the gap between knowledge and experience. So I took a chance, but I hope everybody likes it.
Absolutely. And I'm intrigued about the science that you actually use to measure these transformations, because I know there'll be two camps of people out there. There'll be the more creative and or the crowd that are open to all of this stuff and they want to try stuff. And then there'll be the people, and I put myself into the second camp where before I accept it, I really want to understand the science behind it. So how have you been measuring it from a scientific standpoint?
Well, first, let's answer why you do that. That's because you're a male, and men love the science. They love the nuts and bolts, and I go to great measures in my workshops to build that model so that men can rationalize and reason, and I can take them step by step for them to trust the process. Women, they intuitively already know this. They're going to do it, and then the science is just secondary. Yeah, I get it, but I already know this. So I think men are just wired differently. But so we've measured probably over 8,500 brains, and so we've measured people that come to the event. We do quantitative EEG studies. So I'll say to you, Stu, open your eyes and just do nothing, and then read this book, and then I get a baseline with your brain in action. Then I say, close your eyes and do nothing. And then I say, okay, now go into a meditation. So then I can get some baseline measurements of what you're doing. Then you come through 4 days or 4.5 days of training, and at the end of that Sunday, I measure your brain again, and I see significant changes in your brain, the way it's working, the way you're connecting, how much more synchronized it is, how much orderly, how much more energy is in the brain. And I can say, hey, you know, those changes aren't just in your mind, like, hey, you're feeling better. I'm going to say, the changes are in your brain. It's actually evidence. And then we measure quantitative studies of people actually in the act of meditation. And we can tell when a person's working too hard, when they're trying. We can tell when a person's surrendering and letting go. And we know when they're changing their brain waves. We know when they're creating more coherence. We're seeing that in real time. And we now know to this measure that even when I say certain words, what happens, you know, imagine 14 people getting their brain scanned at the same time. I say one word and all of them go into gamma, coherent gamma at the same time. Now, all of a sudden, words are starting to have more power for people, and we know how to time those words to induce deeper states. So we've done about 8,500 different brain scans. We've measured heart rate variability, what's called HRV, because when you're frustrated and impatient and resentful, your heart beats out of order. When you're joyful and when you're in gratitude and appreciation and care and kindness, your heart beats more orderly. And I want to teach our students how to regulate internal states, you know, independent of the conditions in their external environment. And I think that's when we begin to master our environment. So we probably have about 5,000 different HRV measurements. And we now know that people can develop the skill to create coherence, not just for 5 minutes, but for 45 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour. And when we start seeing really high amplitudes of energy in the brain, and neuroscientists come and look at our work and they say, oh my God, that person's having a seizure, because they've never seen energy like that in their brain before. And we can say, well, if they're having a seizure, their heart wouldn't be in such coherence. They're in love with that experience. Their autonomic nervous system's loving this. They're not in any arousal or any stress. So we've done that. We've measured genetic changes, and in 4 days, we now know that people can change their genes. I mean, we see the cancer diminishing in a weekend. We now know that after our measurements, we've measured 7,500 different gene regulations in a random study of 35 people, and in 4 days, they upregulated the gene to suppress cancer cells and cancer tumor and growth. They've upregulated the gene for neurogenesis, not just making new connections, but growing new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. The gene was upregulated for stem cell production to go to damaged tissues and aging tissues and repair them. The gene for oxidative stress was upregulated, anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-inflammatory, anti-neurodegenerative. The gene for the microtubules of the cells, which are really where consciousness exists, that gene was activated, which means people are resonating on a different frequency. The gene to strengthen immune function was upregulated as well. We've measured the relationship between cortisol and a chemical in your immune system called IgA. And as cortisol levels go up, your immune system goes down. So I said, well, what are the emotions that are created from stress? Well, anger, aggression, hatred, fear, anxiety, pain, suffering, guilt, unworthiness. What if we trade those emotions for joy, freedom, gratitude, love for life, and see if people can sustain those states for 10 minutes a day, just for 4 days, and let's measure what happens to their immune system. their immune system strengthened by 50% in 4 days. So the worst thing that can happen to you if you feel gratitude is you're going to heal. That's what we can guarantee. So we've measured neurotransmitters like oxytocin and serotonin and melatonin. And some of our students have levels of oxytocin, the love chemical, that are over 200 times normal. That's amazing. We've seen PTSD in our psychological evaluations go down, happiness go up, pain levels go down, anxiety diminished by 66%. So we know that people are using this work to live a happier and better life. And we've measured the energy of the room, we've measured the energy around people's bodies, we've measured the energy centers of their bodies, and we now know that people can get good at this.
And just very interesting, I'm going to jump in.
That's all right.
I want to just talk about the M word, the meditation, okay? Because from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that's a really important tool in accessing all of these wonders that you're talking about. And I know that, and I'll talk about it from my perspective and Guy's perspective. So Guy is a devout meditator. Like, he's probably meditating now. And me, on the other hand, like, no, I just don't do it. I tried, I can't do it. I've got such a busy mind. But I do other stuff that makes me feel amazing. And I'll give you an example. So yesterday afternoon, I received this email, and it just set off like cortisol. Like, it may as well have just flooded my system with cortisol. And it was all about business and manufacturing, and this is the worst thing. And my heartbeat was like boom, boom, boom. And I was thinking about it, and I was getting more uptight about this problem, which stemmed from a barrage of emails after that. But then I had to go to the surf club and help a group of like 20 or so youngsters on surfboard training. And it was big waves, and so I got out there for an hour with these kids, and I'm just loving what I'm doing. I'm on a big board, and I'm going over the waves, taking these kids out, and I came back, and the problem disappeared. And no matter how I tried to get back to understanding the problem, it didn't elicit any of those states of stress before. And I thought, whatever I've done has done something to me.
Sure. And look, there's no mystery. I'm going to answer this on two levels because I think it's important for people to really understand that you can demystify this process. Yeah. When you react to someone or something, and you turn on that fight or flight nervous system, there's an imbalance that's taking place in your brain and body because the chemicals of stress arouse us because there's danger out there, or there's some threat, or that we can't control or predict something, or that we have a perception that things can get worse. That primitive system has been very adaptive, especially if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Fear is adaptive. You don't want to turn around and try to pet it. It's not going to work, right? The best thing to do is to have that fear response. Yeah. Or if you're protecting your family, then fear turns into anger, and now it's adaptive because you have to protect the people that you care about and love. So it's been very adaptive, but the complexity of life has created, some really big problems, because now it becomes very maladaptive when it's an email or the coworker that's sitting next to you, or traffic, or the news, or whatever. So when you turn on that system and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for some type of disease because you can't live in emergency mode for all that time. So anything you do that puts you out in nature and takes you from the narrow focus of your problem to an open focus of water and waves and an infinite space, and your brain is in nature and you're no longer focusing, you're taking your attention off it. By you taking your attention off it, you're no longer putting your energy on it. And you're disinvesting your attention and breaking your association to that problem. Now, that's called emotional intelligence. And exercise, surfing, dancing, whatever people are into, crochet, tennis, whatever it is for the person to just break away from their life. It's not that you react. We all react. The question is, how long are you going to react? That's the real question. Right. So now, when you're living by those chemicals, and you're being chased by Tyrannosaurus Rex, there's only three things you care about. Your body, like, I gotta put attention on my body because I may get eaten. Where in my environment am I gonna go? What's the best route to take? And your attention is on that beast because it's chasing you. And time, like, you're preoccupied with time. I only got a short amount of time to do this. So 70% of the time, people live in aroused states because of the hormones of stress. So They believe they're their body because that's where all their attention is. They believe that their identity is connected to people and objects and things and places because that's what makes up our environment. And of course, people are always trying to predict the future based on the past, and they're never in the present moment. So the very hormones of stress heighten our senses, cause us to become materialists, and we narrow our focus on the danger. That means then, the more the emotional reaction you have to that email, the more you'll pay attention to the person who sent it. And if you place your attention on that person, you're giving your power away to that person because that's where your attention is. So by you breaking free from your emotional reaction, you disinvested your attention, and now you broke the refractory period of that emotion. Some people will do that for days, right? And it'll turn into a mood and then a temperament. So why meditation, to answer your question? Because meditation is all about getting beyond your body, getting beyond the people and things and places in your environment, and getting beyond time. And if you can forget about your body, you become nobody. If you forget about the people in your life, you become no one. If you forget about the things you own, you're nothing. And if you're not thinking about where you need to go or where you're sitting, you're in nowhere. And if you're not thinking about time, you're in no time. And that's the moment you're no longer putting any of your attention on anything material. And now you pure consciousness, and that is the moment you start walking through the door to the quantum field. And you can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. So point number one, the purpose of meditation is to get beyond yourself. Point number two, the purpose of meditation is to get beyond that analytical mind of yours. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So 5% of your conscious mind is made up of things like logic and reasoning and will. And your subconscious mind is made up of all these habits and behaviors and unconscious emotional reactions and beliefs that pretty much we do on a daily basis until it becomes a skill or a habit. So then you can't change those subconscious states with your conscious mind. So it turns out if you can teach someone how to slow their brainwaves down from that aroused beta state into alpha and begin to slow the brainwaves down into theta, now they're in the operating system where they can begin to make those changes in the subconscious. So then we teach people how to regulate their states, and it isn't actually hard. All it requires is you to just follow some certain instructions, just like you would learn how to surf. And if you follow the instructions and you do exactly what we tell you to do, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of scans to say that just because you think you have a busy mind doesn't mean that you can't meditate. Actually, you can.
Right.
So then, as you practice this and you find that you're heading towards your email, or you're heading towards what you did yesterday, or you're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, and you become conscious and you back up and you stop and you return back to the present moment, you're carving a path neurologically between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And if you get good at it, you change your brain waves in 4 seconds or 5 seconds or 9 seconds like everybody else. We've measured it. So if I can do it, you can do it, because I have a pretty busy analytical mind. So that's number two. The third thing is that meditation, the exact translation of the symbol that's used in ancient texts, means to become familiar with. So if 95% of who you are is a set of unconscious thoughts, automatic habits and behaviors, and emotions that you're addicted to, then if you're sitting in a meditation and all of a sudden you're becoming conscious of your thoughts, and you're becoming familiar with them, you're becoming aware, and you start noticing your habits, and you start paying attention, observing that, oh my God, I've been living in guilt. I didn't know it was guilt because it just feels like how I always feel. The moment you start becoming familiar with those states of mind and body, you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing the program, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You're pulling out. In other words, who is doing the observing of your thoughts? That's who you really are when you're conscious and you're not immersed in the program. So then, that's the old self. So now, how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. So if you want to create a new personal reality, you got to change your personality. So now you're conscious of those unconscious states, and you're so conscious of them that you'll never go unconscious during your day. And the thought that I can't, or it's too hard, or I'll start tomorrow, or you're angry or you're frustrated, you'll become aware that you're doing that, and it won't happen. So now you're in the unknown. So then you say, all right, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? What thoughts do I want to put my attention behind? What behaviors do I want to demonstrate today? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing your behaviors, if you're truly in the present moment, your brain does not know the difference between what's happening in your outer world and what's happening in your inner world. The thought becomes the experience. Now, the moment that happens, you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain. And if you keep repeating it, the hardware will become a software program. And who knows? You may start acting like a happy person. Well, that's because you installed the circuits. Nothing magical there. You may start thinking in more unlimited ways. Well, why? Because you installed those circuits. And then here's the tough part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that future will feel like before it happens? That means you can't wait for your wealth to feel abundance. You can't wait for your healing to feel wholeness. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love. That's the old model of reality, of waiting for something outside of us to take away the emptiness inside of us. But the quantum model of reality is actually doing the opposite. The moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. The moment you're in love with yourself and in love with life, you create equals. The moment you start generating worthiness and abundance, your wealth starts to appear. Now you're causing an effect. So then, if you keep doing that, firing and wiring and trading guilt for abundance or wholeness, it'll begin to become familiar to you. And it'll start getting easier and easier and easier. And that will become the new habit. Then all of a sudden, you start having these synchronicities, these coincidences, these crazy things start appearing in your life out of nowhere because you're no longer the same person. Your personal reality is connected to a new personality. And when you see those feedback mechanisms, you start seeing those things happen. You start believing that you're more of a creator of your life. And now you do it with more passion and more conviction.
Yeah.
Oh my word. You didn't by any chance write The Matrix, did you?
What, that's a documentary, you know.
Yeah, right.
And I have to add to all this as well, because just to give the flip side of this, that I was one of those 8,500 people you measured with the EEG brain scans, and I did the test where I sat there for 4 minutes and just read a book and then meditated for 2 minutes and then did the change after. And I don't know what this says about me, Joe, because I actually went in and just surrendered. I thought, oh, this Joe seems like a good bloke. I'm just going to do what I told. Like, I didn't really analyze it too much. And within that 4.5 days, you know, I experienced the energy into the mind. It went through me like a freight train. And then when I remeasured it afterwards, it was a completely different thing. I think Jeffrey Fannin said at the time, in 17 years, you know, you're in the kind of 5% or less or whatever. And then from that, when that happens, you kind of start to view the situations in your life differently as well. The association becomes very different from that point onwards. And I don't tend to have those triggers.
That's because, think about this. I always say that energy is a moving freight train. And it's exactly the words I use because people have no idea. Imagine all the life force you have in your loins, or all the energy it takes to digest a meal, all the energy it takes to run from Tyrannosaurus Rex. Instead of it being consumed outward, it's moving back up into the brain. And so when it starts to move and it hits the brain, all that energy, all the guilt, all the pain, all the suffering, all the fear is turning into pure energy, and it's moving back into the brain. And so when that experience happens, experience enriches the brain. The end product of experience, B, is called an emotion. So then most people, they wake up in the morning and they start off their day thinking about their problems. And those problems are wired as memories in their brain. And those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. All of a sudden, the moment they do that, their brain is a record of the past. They're thinking in the past. Those memories create emotions, and those emotions then are feedback from past experiences. So the whole entire state of being of a person is in the past. And you say to the person, why are you feeling so bad? Well, I had this event that happened to me 25 years ago, or 10 years ago, or last week, or 6 months ago. And what that means is they haven't been able to change since that event. So now you have an inner event that's more powerful than the past betrayal or trauma, the past shock. And the energy from that event is capturing all your brain's attention. But it's not coming from your outer world, it's coming from your inner world. And the moment you start feeling that elevated emotion, you're paying attention to the pictures in your mind, and you're creating a new long-term memory. And we could say that from a biological standpoint, you're rewiring your brain and sending a new emotional signature to your body, and your past is literally washed away. Now, we don't perceive things the way they are. We perceive things the way we are. So the moment your brain gets upscale neurologically and you start feeling differently, your spectrum of reality is going to change, because you're no longer viewing your future through the lens of the past. And the side effect of that is psychological healing. It's emotional healing. It's people get their hearing back, people get their eyesight back, people get their cancer to go away, all their skin conditions disappear. Go down the list in 1 second. In 1 second, they get a biological upgrade.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And the question that popped in there then, Joe, for people listening to this, because it feels like pass the ketchup kind of thing, scenario. Because I've explained it to people and it's like, oh yeah, that's nice, and life carries on, right? And I'm sure there'll be a lot of listeners here today. With all the work you've done and all the study and all the transformations you see, for the people outside of that, how much do you think our actual thoughts and emotions that we are running on every day affecting our very health long term? So if
Well, think about it. If you're not being chased by a predator, and it's no longer the coworker who's working next to you, but if you're thinking about your bank account, and you're thinking about your enemy, and you're feeling hatred, and you're feeling fear, then you're turning on the stress response just by thought alone. And it's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress long-term downregulate genes and create disease. So if your thoughts can turn on the stress response, and the stress response pushes the genetic buttons that create disease, then your thoughts can make you sick. So the question is, if your thoughts can make you sick, can your thoughts make you well? So if 95% of those thoughts are unconscious thoughts, then it makes sense then that people could be a good person. They could really be a wonderful person, but they got a program running behind the scenes of their awareness that is signaling the body emotionally, and that program is programming a gene. So then if 70% of the time people live by the hormones of stress, then more than likely most effects in our life, most things in our life that stress us wind up as emotional or psychological stress. 75 to 90% of every person who walks into a healthcare facility walks into a doctor's office in the Western world because of emotional stress. That's 9 out of 10 people, or 8 out of 10 people. Then you got to say to a person, man, we have to start addressing our emotional reactions. So yeah, and if your immune system is beat up because of the hormones of stress, and now you're sensitive to everything. You may have food allergies, you may have rheumatoid arthritis, you may have MS. Those are all immune-mediated conditions. So then diabetes, everything else, all of a sudden comes from lifestyle. So then if your thoughts can make you sick, then it begs the question, can your thoughts make you well? So now, it's not enough to just think a positive thought. As I said, if you're feeling really negative, you gotta open your heart, because if you're saying I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, but you're feeling bad, that thought is never gonna make it past the brainstem to the body. It's gonna stop right there. But if a person all of a sudden starts their day with opening their heart and feeling gratitude and appreciation and kindness and care and love for life, well, and if their body's actually feeling that, their body is the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the experience in their outer world and the experience in the inner world. The body's believing it's in a new outer environment. So then they'll begin to accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to that emotional state, and they'll begin to program their autonomic nervous system into a different destiny. Well, think about it. The emotional signature of gratitude means something has already happened. You give thanks when you get something, when you receive something. So if you're giving thanks before you're receiving it, your body's believing it's already happened. So then it'll accept the thought of your wealth. It'll accept the thought of your health, because it's in alignment with the thought. So then if a person does that enough times, and they're walking around in a state of gratitude, then they're going to feel like their future has already happened. And if they feel like their future has already happened, they're less likely to try to force outcomes and control outcomes or try to predict outcomes, because they're no longer living in anxiety and fear. They know. And so teaching people how to do that and sustain the state with their eyes open is what 2018 is about in our work.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm just checking, I'm aware of the time as well, guys. And
let's keep going. We'll go a little further.
Keep going. Yeah, I can see Steve's cogs turning there as well, you know, from all that. Yeah, so with that answer then, to get beyond the analytical mind, and I just want to clear up for everyone, would the best place to start is in with meditation, to drop down into that state, so then you can start to feel those emotions of gratitude that you think. Because what I've found from doing the work, Joe, is that I can then train the body in that time in the morning, and then I do my best to carry it into the day. Right. You know, because once the day comes, I'm getting things thrown at me left, right, and center. You know, and it's almost like trying to build my armor around it. You know,
but here's the deal. Here's the deal about that. I mean, if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. This goes against generations untold of conditioning to fear and conditioning to lack, to separation, to emptiness, to guilt. We're raised with a very strong conditioning into limitation, and so imagine like the thought is the electrical charge, the feeling is the magnetic charge. Change how you think and feel, you change your energy. You change your energy, you change your life. Almost 30 years of doing this, I can tell you, nobody changes until they change their energy. Yeah. And so then think, if you're connected to the energy of your future and you're feeling gratitude and you're in that energy, and all of a sudden you start feeling fear or anxiety or worry or impatience, you just disconnected from the energy of your future. And now you're back to the energy of your past. You're back on the hamster wheel. So then, nothing wrong with that. It happens to me every day. The question is, though, you're going to go, oh, I'm too upset to make my way back. Well, no, you're doing the meditations to become so familiar with that energy that you can say, give me a minute. I just need a minute. Close your eyes, bring up that state, change your energy, and you're going against the survival chemicals. That's greatness. And so you go unconscious. We all do. But then you got to make your way back and become conscious again. And the act of doing that enough times, it's unnatural. But if you keep doing what's unnatural over and over again, you'll become supernatural. That's exactly the whole purpose of this.
Is it a chemical addiction? So do you know how we can have these habits where we can get stressed and then, you know, because you talk about breaking that pattern and then using the emotions of gratitude. It's really hard to do in that moment as well. Is there a part of it like where we just kind of can enjoy almost the problems that we're having because our body is so accustomed to it? Or...
It is an addiction. It's an intoxication. It's like being a junkie. Look, you have a fear reaction, you have an anger reaction, you have a painful or a sad reaction. The rush of chemistry that's created from your reaction literally arouses the brain and body. It gives it a burst of energy because you're in danger. So people become addicted to that rush of adrenaline, become intoxicated by it, which means then they're using the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm that addiction to that emotion. They need the bad job. They need to complain about the poor relationship. They need to watch the news. They need to do that to make them feel those emotions. So then, if you reason this, it means then people become addicted to the life they don't even like. And so this is why change is so hard, because just like withdrawals from any drug, I was just talking to a colleague who's a very close person in their life is going through withdrawals. And I said, look, the body is craving the chemicals. So you say, I'm not going to judge, I'm not going to complain, I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be frustrated, I'm just going to stop all that today. First 2 hours go really well. Then the body's going like, hey, it's 11 o'clock, you usually check your emails right around this time and you get really ticked off, and usually in traffic at 5 o'clock, and now, well, you're just going to sit here and we're not going to do this. So the body goes, we're on a schedule, and it starts sending signals back to the brain saying, hey, what about that time in your life when you were betrayed? And how about that person in your life that you hate? And all of a sudden, it's flashing images and it's talking to you because it wants you to go back to familiar territory. Now, if you respond to that image or that voice as if it's true, that same thought is going to lead to the same choice, which is going to lead to the same behavior, which is going to create the same experience, which is going to produce the same emotion. And then you say, oh, this feels right. No. Don't get me wrong. That feels familiar. So the moment you decide to change, the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. And if you do, get ready. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unfamiliar. There's going to be uncertainty. You're stepping into the unknown. But most people would rather cling to their guilt and take a chance and possibility. They'd rather hold on to their suffering and tell the story of their past than tell the story of their future. They want to believe in their past more than they want to believe in their future. They want to fall in love with their past more than they want to fall in love with their future. And if you start falling in love with your future more than you fall in love with your past, your life's going to change. It's just simply the act of creating it.
Yeah.
So what do you personally do, Joe, to manage stress? Because I would imagine you'd be thrown into many stressful situations because you travel a lot. You're being hit from all angles.
I am hit. Listen, the things that I have to address in one day are just off the chart. You know, I mean, I just try to see the whole thing as a really big comedy. Just where these immensely powerful beings putting on these dressing up for the masquerade and that person is pretending to be confused. That person is pretending to be angry. Oh, that person is pretending to be in lack. I just see it as a pretending thing, right? Because you can pretend to be anything. So I mean, I get hit from every angle, and it's true, and I manage a lot. But really, for me, is I have to have my time. And if I don't have time for myself, I know I'm going to get further and further out of balance. So I make that a priority, and I make sure that I do the work. I make sure that I connect, and I make sure that I do my best every single day to keep working on who I am. And some days are easier than others, without a doubt. But I think if you keep doing the work, sometimes you wind up in places that you never would expect yourself to wind up, which are really wonderful and surprising. So I don't really care about anything material any longer. It's just who I am and who I become. And I think that it's a great responsibility to do what I do, but there's also a great reward. I mean, every single day we get the most wonderful emails of people healing from all kinds of conditions or creating a new life for themselves. I was out to dinner with a woman in Rome and her husband, and passionate students, and she created her little future, and she took a scene out of a magazine because she wanted to live in the country, overlooking the mountains, a beautiful mountain view. And it was in her mind movie that we use in our work. And she said, you know, I was sitting in my house the other day, my brand new house in Utah, and I was looking out the very window of the scene from the magazine. I'm living in a house. I didn't even know that I was living in a house until I just kind of woke up and said, oh my God, this is, and she ran to her computer and she just put it up and she said, I bought the house that from my mind. They didn't even know that they did it. And they were so excited. I mean, crazy stuff like that happens. I mean, it's amazing. So I love it.
How is the broader science community meeting your work, Joe? Like, is there a lot of interest in this, or is it just sort of going under the radar? Or
well, some people love me because I'm breaking ground, you know, I mean, I'm not interested in normal. I'm not interested in natural. I'm interested in supernatural or supernormal, and so I have a great appreciation for neuroscientists in the neuroscientific community, and I love all the work that's out there because it helps me to build an understanding. But I think there's a division that goes on. I think 50% of them are just intrigued and they love to look at it and understand it and study it. And even my neuroscience team, I mean, you should hear us arguing. Like it's a bloodbath. I mean, it's just no, back and forth because it's so outside. All right, well, okay, let's add that variable. Okay, let's add that measurement. And we keep refining it, and to me that's important because I want my team to ask those questions so that when we present, there's no breakdowns. So it's fascinating because the neuroscientists that come and study us, we actually can say, oh, watch Guy, he's going to pop here in a minute. And they'll say, what do you mean? I say, he's going to pop. Watch the energy in his brain here in the next 10 minutes. You think so? Oh yeah, watch. And all of a sudden, boom. And they say, how do you know that? Well, we've seen it enough times to know that what it looks like. And then they say, well, that's a seizure, or the person's having a stroke. Well, not really. They're not having any of that stuff. It's energy.
Yeah.
So it's outside of the model. So I think the open-minded people that really look, that are inquisitive, they ask me what's happening, and I explain it to them, and they say, that's impossible. And then I say to them, okay, well, tell me what you think's happening. You tell me. And I can't come up with an answer, and then they start thinking about it, and we start having this deep conversation, and they walk away with something else, which is, I mean, I've done it. I've had a guy yell at me at lunch. I get up and walk away and come back an hour later and say, I've been thought it. You know what? This could work. And then all of a sudden he's all in, because I say, it's going to happen again this afternoon, so watch.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the first one. This is going to go on for the next 3 days. So those people I appreciate because they start supporting the work and they start asking bigger questions and they guide me in a lot of ways. And then there's people that just, they're not interested. And I realize that I don't really want to not waste my time, let me say this a better way. I really don't want to have that battle. Because those people are they're not going to like me no matter what. So why even, I want to talk to the people who really want to hear me than that I want to fight with the people who don't. So I'm investing my attention and energy into this model, and it seems to be like if something happens once, it's an incident. If it happens twice, it's a coincidence. But now we're talking about hundreds of times. I mean, we're talking about science here. We're talking about law. It's just not an incident. It's anything that's repeatable is science, and we're measuring it. So maybe we're making history. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so.
Watch this space.
Well, for anyone listening to this, I'd 100%, 1000% encourage them to go and check out a workshop. But that's the only way you can really start to get any kind of tangible relation to some of the things we spoke about today. And Joe, I just want to mention as well that you are moving towards longer workshops next year. Is that correct?
Guy, the reason I decided to do this is because we've done 19 advanced workshops in the last 5 years. And I tell you, it's been the most amazing ride of my life. Because after every advanced workshop, I say to my staff, it can't get better than that. It just cannot get better. But the next one is always even more powerful. So what I witnessed is that right around the third day, the Saturday or the Sunday, just when we're finishing, the miracles are happening. And I realized watching this one event in Cancun, I just watched all these people get up and tell their story, and I started thinking about what would happen if I had 3 more days? What is possible if we went a little further down the rabbit hole? So then I said, I actually didn't tell my staff, I just announced it that the next teaching session, I said, I'm not doing advanced workshops after this year. I'm going to do week-long advanced workshops and give people an opportunity to really deepen their understanding. And I want to do community-building things. And I want people, because one of the things people want in our, we get so many emails about community. Like, they love being with everybody. So community-building things and fun things and talent shows and challenging people to regulate those states when they're challenged in certain situations. So now they do the work. So then now we put them into the test. We initiate them now to see what they can do and teach them how to say, okay, I know you're afraid. I know this is a little scary moment. Okay, let's take a moment here and let's change our energy. Let's do it. And so now they're working. And they're doing it, so they're going to the next level. So I have a bunch of things I've planned for these week-long events, and we'll do them. We're in Spain in January, and then we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That one's already got we just put it online. We put it online this weekend, and it was sold out in a weekend. So 950 people.
Fantastic.
And so we have Berlin is almost filled up in May, and we have Italy, and we have Australia in October, and So we're going to do one big week long somewhere, UK, France, Mexico, Canada, two or three in the United States. And that way I can just really connect with people. And we were counting yesterday. I did maybe 20 some odd progressive workshops this year, 25 or 26, something crazy.
Oh, word.
And a lot of magic happens there, but I don't want to do them anymore. I want to make them an online course, and people can study at home, and they don't have to travel anywhere. And I want to invest all my energy into these week-longs, and I think they'll be really spectacular.
I have no doubt. Wow, it's incredible. I look forward to it, Joe. I look forward to it. Right, we ask everyone certain questions on the show on each podcast. And the first one is, what are your non-negotiables each day to be the best version of yourself?
Oh, non-negotiable, my morning hours. I will not give that up for anyone or anything. That's my time. And I take 2 hours for myself every morning. And those are my time to connect. There's time to get my brain and body right. There's a time to remind myself of my mission, my purpose, and my vision. To be defined by that vision, to look at the parts of myself that don't belong in my future. And that's my time to create. And because the rest of the day I'm serving, the rest of the day I'm giving, the rest of the day I'm in action. So my mornings are my time, and I'm non-negotiable to that. I probably would say that surrounding myself with people that have my back and have a similar mission, and letting those people into my inner world and to trust them. I'm non-negotiable about having that quality of community and friendship, so that I can do what I do, and I think more than anything else is just that I have a real big passion to be the example of everything that I teach. So those are the things that I live by.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And last question: what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oof,
it's a tough one.
Just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
Okay, I like it. Yeah,
beautiful.
That is good advice. I like it.
Totally. And for everyone listening to this, Joe, if they want to grab a copy of your new book, Becoming Supernatural, or just check out your workshops, where's the best place to send them to, mate?
Well, the book probably is it's still doing well on Amazon, so you can get the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can get it on our website. The website is just drjoedispenza.com, DRJOEDISPENZA and .com. And on that website, there's just a bunch of resources for events that we're doing, and also, whatever people want to do, meditations and teleclasses and stuff. I will say one thing that I wanted to say when I saw the two of you.
Yeah.
We do workshops, progressive workshops, all over the world. I mean, in Romania and Mexico City and everywhere. And there's never been a workshop, progressive workshop this year, where there hasn't been an Australian.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah. Every single, Australians, they're like, okay, it's in Zagreb, I'm coming. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go. So it's really cool to see that. I really appreciate Australians' willingness to travel. So.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, we'll certainly, when we release it, push this far and wide and help get the message out there and all the work you do, Joe. It's greatly appreciated. I've experienced it firsthand, and it's certainly been a big influence on my life personally. So thank you for coming on the podcast and for everything you do, Joe. It's greatly appreciated from us here in Australia, that's for sure.
Well, listen, the best compliment you could ever give me is to do the work, right? I mean, that's it. So thanks for doing the work.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Well, all right.
Thanks for your time, Joe.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay.